Do you feel like you're still struggling with something that you should just be over by now? Maybe it's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, or a month or 2 months. Just we have a way in our logical mind of measuring some sort of timeline. There's like a timeline of expectation that we kind of hold over ourselves. And when we're still emotionally processing or working through something, or we're still mad about something, or we're still stuck in some area of our lives, we judge ourselves for it and we think we should be farther along by now. Well, I'm going to explain to you in today's episode why sometimes it does take years for you to move through things, and why this isn't a problem and it's actually a strategy for survival. It's very fascinating, and you're going to feel so much more grace and compassion with yourself. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast, where we embrace our needs as moms. We learn to lead ourselves first, then our families, and where we create our own healing from the inside out to find our way to the work we were meant to do in this world. I'm your host, a fellow mom of 3 and a certified life coach, Lizzie Langston. Hi. I'm so happy to be with you guys. I was praying out loud in my car today. It's like a new thing. Okay, well, I've prayed out loud in my car for a long time. Of my life. It's not something that I've not done before, but this one was different because recently I've just been going through this faith transition-y, squishy, like, who am I? What do I believe? And I've really taken ownership of my spirituality, and I've really tried to separate any sort of culturization in the spiritual realm of my life from my authentic, like Lizzie true flavor of how I want to worship and what I want to worship and what is it all, like really exploring my own divine connection. And so I was praying in my car today, and you should have heard me because I have thoughts. Okay. In the middle of it, I didn't allow thoughts of judgment at all. I'm going to tell you my thoughts, and they weren't like mean judgments, but it's just funny. When I was praying, I was talking just like I am right now. I was like, oh my gosh. And thank you for sending me Gabby Bernstein, my mentor that I love. I'm so grateful I found her. Like, I was talking to my team of angels and my heavenly people, home dogs, like I was like having a great time. It was so fun. It was like a party. And I just wanted to put that out there because I kind of loved it. And I want you to know that I want to encourage you to find your own spiritual flavor. That is the end of my completely irrelevant but totally delicious introduction to this podcast episode. Hi, I'm Lizzie Langston. If you haven't met me, I am not always this peppy. Sometimes I sound really tired on this podcast. I'm just a real multifaceted human, and I'm also a mom of 4 kids. My baby's sleeping in the room next to me. It's actually a closet. It's a dark closet with a sound machine. In a pack and play in the closet. Yep, that's my 4th baby. And we live in Mesa, Arizona. I just had my 4th baby in May of 2023. And listen, I've had the full gamut of experiences. For whatever reason, the universe chose to dub me the woman that was going to become the postpartum coach. I've had severe and intense birth trauma. With my first, I lost 1/4 of my blood supply in a postpartum hemorrhage related to preeclampsia and the medications, magnesium that I got on because of that preeclampsia. And then I had PTSD really bad in the hospital with my 2nd baby. And following up with that, had postpartum when I got home, panic attacks, anxiety, depression, and had no idea why. Was totally out of my body and scared because we call that dissociated in the trauma world. I was literally like hanging out in my brain because my body was a scary place to be because I didn't understand what was going on. And we're going to talk about that in today's episode, by the way. We're going to be talking about why we leave our bodies, hide up in our brains, and then feel stuck 3 years later, maybe after something really hard and horrible happened. We get re-triggered, and why we feel like we can't move past it. We're going to talk about the timing of healing and what your body is actually looking for to heal. It's hint, hint, hint. It's not time to pass, right? Everybody's like, oh, time heals all wounds. Actually, taking it out and looking at it and healing it heals the wounds. Time doesn't, but it can give us the illusion that it is. And sometimes as time passes, we in our mind take out wounds and, we talk through our things and process, and that is healing, but it's not the time that does it. And so we're going to be talking about that today. Anyway, so that was my first baby. And then my second baby, PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, right after that. Then third baby, we had a totally different experience. I chose to have a totally different experience. We went to a birth center, Willow Birth Center, actually in Mesa, Arizona. And we did an unmedicated birth, and it was beautiful, water birth. And still about 5 months postpartum struggled with panic attack. Not panic attacks at that point, but definitely anxiety. And it would burn me out, and I would get into depressiveness, and I was very lonely, and I felt isolated, and I had kind of scary thoughts. And so my brain was like trying to get my attention. So I took a 5.5-year break from having kids to delve into the mental health space, not because I wanted to make money, but because I wanted to understand my own mind, because it was such a terrifying experience. Now, I did end up finding my life's dream of a calling and vocation, which is becoming the postpartum life coach. And I did end up integrating many different modalities of healing, including therapeutic and parts therapy tools, and then body somatic work and tapping and meditating and breath work and yoga and life coaching, the general generic way it's taught. And then also some shamanic spiritual stuff. And I got into plant medicine, and oh my gosh, you name it, I've probably tried it as far as the healing space goes. And I love it all. Trauma certified. Like I had a blast. And then I had another baby, and it's been going so well. I mean, it's not been perfect, and it's always intense. I mean, I don't know what perfect would even be. That feels weird, but it's been intense because it always is postpartum. And I've even struggled with the same things I always did, like a little bit of anxiety here or there, PTSD here or there, depressiveness here or there, but I know how to keep it from escalating. So I kind of like figured it out. I deconstructed depression and deconstructed anxiety, and I give it to moms and lay it out there and teach it to them and help them to deconstruct and understand these things, and then have power over them and not feel afraid of them for the rest of their lives. And so I personally think the decade that you're having babies is seriously the best time to do this work. It is the best time to invest. So many women wait till they have more money and more time to invest, but by then their kids are raised and the damage is done. And hey, there's nothing that therapy can't fix. I'm going to say that right now, or Jesus Christ, right? Like there's nothing that can't be healed, but why wait? Let's do it now while we're all in it together in the thick of it. So that's kind of my vibe. That's my community here. And welcome to my podcast if you've never been here. So I wanted to explain a little bit today in this episode, a very common thing when my clients begin healing and they begin experiencing relief. The first thing that they tend to ask themselves is, why did it take me so long? And what I was saying earlier in the intro, I want to say it again here, which is time and how long it's been since your traumatic event or the moment, you were really quite overwhelmed or that chapter of your life that was just really horrible. Time has nothing to do with it. Okay, so what does it have to do with? What are the factors that predict or help our healing along? What is it that our body and our mind and our subconscious and all parts of us are looking for? Or what is it that they're wanting, and what is it that they need to have in order to get past something that feels like it's yanking you back? Let me give you an example or some examples of things that pull people back, things that you might be struggling with, that I've definitely struggled with, that are common things women tend to struggle with for years. I want to normalize this so that you can feel less discouraged and more like, oh, okay, this is just what happens. So these are things that my clients have actually struggled with, or I have. I'm just going to list off some. How about your relationship with your mom? Maybe you're still triggered by her, and it's been, 5 or 6 years since you've been out on your own and married, and she still gets your goat, right? Or what about a memory of a boyfriend that touched you inappropriately without consent? And now, every now and then, when your husband or your boyfriend touches you, now you are totally like alarmed. You have this weird thing where you kind of go into self-protection mode, but you love and trust the partner that you're with now, but that past trauma still gets you. And it's been 10 years since you dated that guy, right? Or you might be convinced that the same birth trauma that happened with your last baby is going to happen again with this baby. And it's been how many years, right? And you're like, shouldn't I be brave now? Shouldn't I be over it by now? Shouldn't I have figured it out, healed it by now? And you're kind of hard on yourself for that, or maybe your spouse is, or whatever. Same thing with postpartum. So we've got birth trauma, but we've got postpartum trauma. And what about, last time you had a baby and you were postpartum, maybe it was the pandemic, or maybe you had a health problem, or maybe your husband lost his job, or maybe you were depressed or anxious. And now there's a part of you that's completely terrified to be postpartum again, even though there's a rational part of you that says, no, it's not going to happen. Let me break this down. Let me help you understand why you're confused. There's two parts of you. There's the part of you that is wounded from this past experience, or that is, has all this relational data with your mom that still bugs you. There's that part of you that is wrapped up in it. And then there's the part of you that is sitting over here like, why am I still wrapped up in it? Right? And we know there's two parts of you because one part of you is confused. And the other part of you is she's not talking, but she's definitely still upset about something and she's still struggling with it. So the whole goal and the whole way we need to move forward is we got to get the two parts of you to see one another and to understand one another. And then we have to get the part of you that's scared, or the part of you that is angry, or the part of you that's wounded. We have to get her to trust the part of you that wants to move on and wants to move forward. And so many women don't know that there's these two parts, and they don't know how to talk to themselves with kindness, and they don't know how to get that one part of you that doesn't want, that's totally still scared of the same bad thing happening again. They don't know how to get her on their team. They don't even know that she's there. So they're just so busy criticizing themselves for not being healed that they stay stuck. But I don't want that for you. You guys are here on the podcast. People that listen to podcasts are like the movers and shakers and self-healers. They are the people that are ready to take action. That is why I created a podcast versus freaking Instagram Reels. Do I like dancing on camera for millions of strangers? I don't think so. No, thank you. I actually love dancing, but I'm kind of more private, but I love podcasting because it's like, let's just get to the meat. Let's just actually do this thing. Now, if you're that kind of a lady, I do want to tell you that you might really enjoy coaching. If you're the kind of lady that likes to move the needle, if you're reading the self-help books, you've always just been that sort of self-driver. You're instinctive. What's that word? I don't know. You have instinct, you have intuition, and your intuition has been guiding you to this podcast and has been guiding you to maybe finally working through your birth trauma, or maybe you're planning for another baby and you're like, anxiety was really a struggle for me last time more than I liked. I want to get ahead of it this time. If you're that kind of proactive healer lady, you will just love coaching. Coaching is like putting the car keys. Coaching is like a horse for a woman who was born to be a horse rider, and she finally gets on the horse and she's like, giddy up. Like she's not even scared. And her horse coach person is like, oh my gosh, you were definitely meant to do this. I've never seen anybody hop on a horse and be that confident and safe feeling and stuff. That's what coaching allows your soul to do. Your soul wants to move forward. It wants to progress. It wants to heal. It wants to be unburdened and free to live its purpose, to be your authentic self. But so many layers of pain and memories and trauma and triggers hold us back. And what coaching allows you to do, I will say coaching with me specifically with postpartum related stuff, is it helps you get in there and like be kind and loving with yourself and still move on. Like actually get to the root of why it is that you're stuck. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. And I think every woman deserves to have some basic tools and understandings. So I do have an online course. It's called Postpartum Freedom. You can buy it right now. If you sign up for my freebie, which is just at LizzieLangston.com, it's a free mini course called Get Out of the Postpartum Rut. You can get to know me. You can get to know how I teach. You can definitely understand better yourself right now and the ruts that we get into postpartum and start getting some momentum. Anyway, and then you'll get a discount code for my course. So there's the online course, Postpartum Freedom. Sign up for the freebie, you'll get a code. Then I also have Marco Polo groups at this time currently that I'm recording. I don't know if I will always, but today's July 26th, 2023, and I am starting Marco Polo groups, support groups. It is a paid thing, but it is very affordable, and I try to keep it to 10 women or less in a group, and I'm in there, or one of my mentors is in there, and it's just incredible, supportive, and also, again, we use the needle. We don't use needles. We move the needle. We move the needle of our healing with my tools, and you do get access to my online course when you're in those groups as well. And then I have private coaching, and you can book a consultation, a 30-minute free consult to talk with me about private coaching. Again, I'm offering it currently now. We'll see what I'm offering, whenever. Is this 5 years from now? I don't know. You'll have to check my website. So when in doubt, just go to LizzieLangston.com. You will see the options of how you can work with me, and check the show notes. Okay, so moving on. Now you know why you're confused, because there's two parts of you. There's that wounded part, and then there's the part that's ready to giddy up, heal, move on, move forward. She has her sights set on something that she wants. Maybe she wants another baby. Maybe she wants a good relationship with her mom. Maybe she wants to not flinch when her husband touches her to initiate, I don't know, cute lovingness, foreplay, sex, whatever, right? But her wounded part is like jumpy. Her wounded part is still doing the same stuff that she's always been doing. That exact crisis or scenario where there's the push and the pull of the wounded part of you and the part of you that's ready to move on is where coaching comes in, and it's where it thrives. Now, specifically, let's talk about the timing of healing. Why sometimes it can seem like we're just stuck for so long, or longer than we think we should be. My coach self wants to go on this rant right now about we really have no business having a timeline for our healing. But I know that there is a part of me that's like, seriously though, why is this still bothering me? So let's go there. Let's talk to her. I want to teach her something. I want to teach her about the nervous system. The nervous system is the part of the central nervous system. Okay. It's like your brain and spinal cord mostly. And it's the part of you that decides when it's time to heal and when it's time to save it for later. When we go through something really intense, I'm going to pretend it was really bad postpartum anxiety and depression. That's what it was for me. Our body, our nervous system specifically, is in charge of saying, okay, let's get our resources and process this. Maybe we need to hire a therapist, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe we just need to go into survival mode, do the bare minimum, and save this for later, and we'll deal with it later. Okay, so our nervous system is measuring things like how much emotional capacity we have and how safe do we feel. It's a lot about safety, and not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. Do we have someone that we've identified in our life that can help us through this? Do we feel safe and comfortable talking about spending money on a mental health provider right now? Do we feel safe and comfortable with whatever, however we might work through it? Again, though, this is a subconsciously done thing, because when you're going through something really intense, you're probably going to either fight, take flight, or freeze. Okay. And so fight, flight, freeze, you've heard of those. Those are trauma responses. Those are ways that your nervous system has you behave in order to survive and adapt something that feels threatening to your life and existence. And yes, emotional states can feel threatening to your life and existence. Do people commit suicide from depression? They do. Certain emotions can feel life-threatening if we don't know how to get out of them ourselves. And that was me, actually. The only time I've ever had thoughts about ending my life, even though I never planned it, when I go there in my mind, it's just a signal to me that I'm feeling desperate and hopeless with how I'm emotionally coping with the situation. Okay, so moving on and kind of to review, you are going to have external behaviors when you're going through something they are dictated by your nervous system. Your nervous system is going to decide whether you have the capacity to emotionally process everything, or whether it's too intense for you and you need to store it and save it for another time when your capacity is bigger. And that capacity could be not big enough because you're busy or you've got too much other things on your plate, or it could be because you never were taught what to do with these big, intense emotions and you've never experienced them to this intensity. Either way, at the end of the day, it is I call it your subconscious healing system, but it's essentially the nervous system. It is part of your brain that decides and makes the call on if you're going to deal with it now or if you're going to store it later. And then when does it get brought up again? It changes and it varies for everybody because it comes down to a few things. Number one, do you feel safe and stable enough in your life? If you're going to bring up something that was very intense and traumatic, you're going to continue feeling it. Did you know that? Like, I have to give you an example. In trauma training, we call it finishing the run. If there was a bear and this bear was being chased by some hunters that had those guns that would put it to sleep and then it would wake up hours later somewhere else, right? So they could take it wherever they wanted to. I forget what those are called, one of those darts. So let's say the bear's running away from the hunters shoot the little dart into the bear's butt. He falls down. When that bear wakes up, they've done research on this. What the bear's going to do is he's going to want to finish the run. When he wakes up, he still thinks he's where he was. And it's not just because he went to sleep. It's because his nervous system stored the emotion. Okay. And he has to do it later. And so that happens with us as well. We don't necessarily go to sleep, but it could be that we're just too busy. It could be that it's just too intense that we don't have the capacity. Maybe we're in the middle of moving to a new state, or maybe we just found out our child has this ADHD or autism diagnosis, and we had birth trauma, and we had a baby, and we're in the middle of postpartum depression, And so what do? We kind of store it because strategically speaking, it's too much. It literally is. We do have a limit to how much energy and capacity we have to focus on something difficult and challenging, that's emotionally difficult and challenging. And so isn't this cool? We have this feature that kind of it's like presses a little remote button. It's like, boop, pause. Okay. But that means that later, whenever it does come up, we have to finish the run. That means that sometimes when we bring up trauma and we bring up hard stuff, it's like it was yesterday. It feels very fresh because it is. Because on a nervous system level, 0 time has passed. And that is what wrecks us. We get so confused because yes, time linearly has passed. And there's this other part of you that's not the broken, hurt, traumatized part of you from this one thing that happened a bunch of years ago that has been great. She's been having a great life for the last X amount of time, months, years, whatever, right? But this wounded part of you has been sitting in a corner, wrapped up in her own trauma, and she's burdened and she is ready to be unburdened. And when she does become unburdened, it's as fresh as yesterday. And so do you see that kind of juxtaposition of the part of you that's like wild and free and happy and doing her life, and then the part of you that's wounded? This can actually create essentially an identity crisis. You might identify as somebody who has worked through these things already. You are like, oh, I thought I worked through my birth trauma until I got pregnant again. I thought I had a great relationship with my mom and I had kind of grieved everything she never gave me, and now we're good. Until Mother's Day came around this year, right? And so it can feel like this slingshot effect where we're getting pulled back into the same stuff. But let me tell you, just like burping after a really good meal can sometimes in some cultures be a compliment to the chef. In some cultures, I'm not saying your mom would be necessarily flattered if you burped at her table after a meal, but in some cultures that is true. Like a burp signifies, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I'm so satiated. It's actually similar when your subconscious decides that it's time to bring up past trauma and it's inconvenient and it's making you a little nuts. And when trauma comes up, friends, I mean, you can get stomach aches, you can break out in hives or acne. Trauma is very, physiological. And so and then it can also make it can make you have mood swings. You can be a lot more emotionally fragile for a while as you work through these things. And so of course, the part of you that just wants to be free of it is like, what is going on here? That's that identity crisis, right? But listen, this is the really cool part. It's actually a compliment to you when your subconscious deems you stable enough and confident and mature enough to deal with something big from your past that needs to be dealt with. Okay? And I'm seeing a pattern with the postpartum women, which is when you go to have a baby, you're typically pretty stable in your life. Sometimes, you get pregnant when you weren't planning on it and things don't feel as stable as you wish, whether it's emotionally or financially. I get that. But let's pretend that you chose to get pregnant. You conceived, you are pregnant. You're so excited. You've been wanting a baby. Usually before we do that, we have a job, or our husband or our partner has a job. We usually have a partner. If we want a partner, we've usually set up things to our advantage so that we can be safe having this vulnerable experience of having a baby, because things can go wrong, right? Usually we have insurance. We have all these parameters set up to give us the most success as possible. Usually we're living near a hospital if we want a hospital birth, or we have found midwives if we want a home birth or whatever. And it's the same. We should be doing the same thing when it comes to trauma coming up. And your body, when it kind of starts gnawing at you, you start having this little inclination that you need to work through this or that thing, or you notice that you're still triggered by this thing and you find a desire, you feel a desire to work on it and get that trigger situation. You're done being triggered. You want to be over it and move on. That is so cool when it's actually time, because that means that your subconscious healing system thinks that you're stable and mature enough to handle it. And also might perceive that you have found a coach or somebody, a therapist or a yoga instructor or some sort of modality that is the chosen modality that you want to use to heal. So it's actually a celebration in some ways, right? It's hard going through traumatic things or, wounded parts of our past. Yeah, it's not necessarily always hunky-dory fun and energetic. It's definitely, we go back to those low places and those painful memories. But at the same time, it leaves you unburdened afterwards. And remember, when you're feeling guided to do the healing work, it's probably because you're at a really good spot in your life. You can actually handle bringing out that bag of chips. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. So that's what I wanted you to know. That's why you're not over it yet, is because it hasn't been time yet. And when it is time to get over it, it will be because you're stable. And listen, you might not think you're stable, but if something's coming up, you are. So you might be like, no, I'm a hot mess, but no. And sometimes it's not just how stable you are. It's that you have found a mentor or a class or a podcast or a life coach on a podcast who's really cool, and her name's Lizzie. But sometimes it's that you have found somebody that you're like, oh, she gets it. And I don't, but I know that she can teach me what I need to know to get it and to be able to heal. Right. And so that's pretty cool. That's what I love about my job. What I love about my job is that people's subconscious healing systems, their central nervous systems, start to feel safe enough to bring something up, not because they have safety in their body, because they still have this wounded part of themselves, but because they feel the amount of safety I have with myself and my body, and the amount of safety that I have to give them, and the space, the safe space I have to hold for them in a sacred journey of some sessions and some tears and some holding your tears. I'm honored to do that. I do have space for you. I was going to say I'm amazing at it, but that always feels weird when I say it. There's like a part of me that doesn't feel okay with saying that. But I will say that I love it. I love it. And it's beautiful to me. And I'm always honored if you were to choose me and if I feel like the one that's meant to do that with you. Oh my gosh, spit. I can't talk. But whoever it is, I just want you to know, trust that it's the time if it's coming up right now. And if you're still stuck on it and it doesn't feel like the time, trust that too. Trust your subconscious healing system. Your body is your best friend. Your body wants to be healed too. There's nothing wrong with you when you have things that trigger you, when you have things that set you back. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. You're amazing. You're just a human who has adapted to life's intensities. And this is one of the ways you've adapted, is you've stored it and you're saving it for later strategically. And there will be a good time. And if now's not that time, then own that. And if now is that time, then step up And if it is the time, let me tell you, you can come work with me. I have private coaching. I have an amazing course that is self-study. And then you can also comment on the course, and I get emailed and see all of those comments and will reply to you. I have a Facebook group for people who they've purchased my course. They get access to a Facebook group where we can all mingle and ask questions about the course and have community as well. So there's so much here for you. I've got you if you need me. And let's see you next week. Bye. Check the show notes for all the links you need. Okay? Bye.
Hey, Lizzie here. I've helped dozens of postpartum moms just like you to manage their postpartum anxiety and deconstruct their postpartum depression. It's really easy for me. So if you're ready to feel better, I know the way. Let's chat on the phone. Set up a time by going to LizzieLangston.com/consult. It's pretty simple, and I will be calling you soon.